So the other day, I released a short clip titled "Calvinism Promotes Antinatalism," and so essentially, antinatalism is basically, what it says right here, philosophical views that are critical of reproduction. They consider coming into existence as bad or deem procreation as immoral. Antinatalists thus argue that humans should abstain from having children. Now, before we get into how this relates to Calvinism, I'd like to go and read some Calvinistic quotes. Here's some by the man himself, John Calvin. Let's see, where was it? The first one is, "The will of God is the chief and principal cause of all things." So God causes everything in Calvinism. And we'll get into some of the logical implications of that later on here. Let's see, what is it? God controls the purposes of men and turns their thoughts and exertions to whatever he pleases. So God is the reason that you think of the things that you do. Every single thought that pops in your head, according to Calvinism, and John Calvin himself, is because that's what God wanted you to think. In a wonderful and inconceivable manner, he regulates all the movements of men. There is no free will in Calvinism, even though he kind of tries to say that. There's none. God's behind every single action in Calvinism. Here, he admits that God was, according to him, God was the reason behind the fall of man. God's the reason why Adam and Eve sinned, according to John Calvin. Now, this is on an Arminian website. Just thought I'd let you guys know. So, if you go and read some of these blurbs here, I didn't really. I just kind of skimmed them. You might see some nonsense in there. Let's see. God ordains a man's future. And here we go. We cannot comprehend how God can will that to be done which he forbids us to do. What does this mean right there? Let me just go look this up real quick. So, John Calvin, under his own system, he can't figure out how God actually wants you to sin, even though he says you don't. And so he just says, let us remember how very stupid and foolish we are. I mean, you're pretty damn stupid and foolish, I can tell you that, Calvin. That's why you're burning in hell right now. Been burning in hell for a couple 100 years. So yeah, according to Calvinism and John Calvin himself, God wants you to sin. And then says you don't. But yet, he says everyone's without excuse. Doesn't really sound like it to me. If Calvinism is the truth, which it's not. Every single event is ordered by God, and every event comes from his intended will. Nothing happens by chance. Men can deliberately do nothing unless God, inspires it. Now, let's tie this into this next little quote here from James White. If he didn't decree child rape, referring to God, then that rape is an element of meaningless evil that has no purpose. Yeah, John White, he understands the logical implications of Calvinism. And his God, Satan, which, he claims is the God of the Bible, which is the god of this world. Or sorry. Satan is the god of this world. He's not the God of the Bible. He claims that the God of this world is the God of the Bible, which is not true. And he thinks that the God of the Bible decrees child rape when it's actually his God, Satan. Now, let's keep all this stuff in mind here, every single thought that you have, every single little event that happens is according to God's will. And now let's watch this clip.
Two boys.
So I have 4 kids, and so 2 is already beginning to push into sort of dangerous territory.
Listen to what he just said there. Listen now, think about how he sees it. Even having 2 children is beginning to push into dangerous territory.
When you start to have 2, 3, 4 kids, really the odds of every single one of them being elect are slim to none.
See? There's another man who understands the logical implications of Calvinism. Now, he really is just playing a numbers game here, which, is what God wanted him to do according to him. Is the kind of fear and doubt that you have as a Calvinist.
To be a Calvinist parent, you have to have a bit of, honestly, I think some cognitive dissonance.
In order to be a parent as a Calvinist, you need to live with cognitive dissonance at all times.
Where you're not able to fully internalize the ultimate implications of what that means, because it's
yeah, you can't think about your stupid theological system because of how much fear it brings you. And now, keep in mind that according to Calvinism, this is exactly what God wants for him. This is exactly what he wants for every Calvinist parent.
An absolutely untenable way to live. You can't live that way, looking at your child in the face every day knowing, hey, God might actually hate him.
You can't live at all under this Calvinistic system once you actually start to think of the logical implications of it. That's why he's forced to turn his brain off.
Not for any reasons, any good or bad he ever did, but he just chose to create him as somebody that he hated. Yeah, I just think that's something that might sound like an emotional appeal, but I think it's just we're appealing to the consideration of whether or not this system ultimately allows somebody to live life.
Yeah, you have to live under cognitive dissonance so you can even live life
in a functional way. How many kids?
That's just pure evil. And so, laying this all out here, the Calvinist God has created a system so horrifying by his own will that when you're a parent, you have to live with a fragmented mind just to even live life in a functional way. And that's exactly what he wants. He forced you to live with that fragmented cognitive dissonance mind. That's exactly what he wanted, according to John Calvin. And God also ordained that you have all those children that he may or may not damn to hell. And he wants you to know that the whole time. That's what he wants you to know. He wants you to live in fear of all that when you're a Calvinist parent. Now, obviously, hold on a second. Calvinism is false, and these people are living the ultimate they're living with the ultimate fatalistic mindset. And obviously, when they start to think about the logical implications, the best thing to do would to not have kids. That's why Calvinism promotes antinatalism. And actually, funnily enough, not that long ago, an antinatalist showed up leaving this here comment. I mean, God commands us to be fruitful, multiply. He says, where does he say that? That has happened millions of times over, so we don't need to do it anymore. Makes sense? I don't even know what to say with some of these people. Yeah, this man, he does not have a very positive outlook on life. But I went and Googled arguments for, just Calvinism and antinatalism. And, here's another one. The overwhelming majority of souls are damned. Therefore, your offspring will probably be damned. You shouldn't have children under the system of Calvinism. That's the only logical conclusion, and that's what the God of Calvinism wants you to think. Because he's the one that predestined your thoughts. He's the one who forced you to think like that through his will. I mean, honestly, Calvinism sounds kind of pantheistic. Everyone, if you really think about it, is just an extension of God's will, according to them. So, I guess if you think about it in that way, there really is nothing other than God. Well, what else was there? Well, I think that one's pretty much it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap this up. In short, Calvinism promotes antinatalism.